And it looks like we are live. Got to give this thing just a second here so that we can get our buddy John K down there. And there's the thumbs up, green check marks across all platforms as we pull in the Facebook group. Mile high hello, everybody in Broncos country, and welcome into another episode of the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. I'm your host, Lance Sanderson. Joining me as per usual is my good friend and colleague. He is your Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. Erick, Senior Bowl week, man. The game's tomorrow. We've got a whole bunch of information from practices. Been watching a lot of videos. What's going on, man? This is obviously your favorite time of the year. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited. I got to talk to Chad the other day and looking at getting me down to the Senior Bowl next year, so we'll see how that goes, obviously. Yeah. Expenses flying from Alaska to Alabama. It's a long distance. So it's going to depend on things, but I'm excited for it. It's one of my favorite parts of the year. And this year, especially with everything that's going on and the combine impact of the importance of the Senior Bowl has skyrocketed. Yeah. So this would have been a great year to be there, but hey, maybe next year I'll be there finally.
Yeah, I'd love to go too. I've always wanted to go to the Senior Bowl. I went to the draft a few years ago. That was an amazing time. Got to meet a whole bunch of cool people. Got to meet some of the prospects and talk to them as well. And really just kind of get to know some of those guys and to see them in their human aspect and the emotion, the raw emotion of people getting drafted and whatnot is just absolutely amazing. I really want to go to either the Combine one of these days or to the Senior Bowl if I can potentially get there. But guys, before we get into, we're going to break down some of the risers from the Senior Bowl. We're going to do the 10 on the national team from each of us and also another 10 on the American team from each of us. But before we get into that, guys, we have to say hello to our presenting sponsor of today's show, Manscaped. So listen up, fellas. 2020 sucked, but it's 2021 now, which means it's time to embrace the new year and new me mindset. The best way to start cultivating that is with Manscaped. Manscaped is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, offering precision-engineered tools, for your family jewels and helping 2 million men around the world keep their male grooming on point. So if you let yourself go in 2020 while in quarantine, Manscaped is here for you to reboot and stay clean and stay shaved in 2021. Now, Erick, I know you got that Lawnmower 3.0. Why don't you tell us about that a little bit?
Well, I'm going to talk about a few different things. I'm going to talk about the carrying bag that it comes with. It's big. It carries everything that you can get from them. I mean, they have the nose hair trimmer. They have a lotion. They have all this sort of stuff. And, of course, the Lawnmower 3000. And, yeah, so if you're traveling and everything, it makes it work extremely well to fit everything in there. And you can also get a really comfortable pair of boxer briefs too. But yeah, the Lawnmower 3000, it's lightweight, it's very easy, it's durable, and turns on. You get the little light for it to see, which comes in handy in the dark Alaskan winters. And yeah, it's very easy to use. It doesn't cause any pain or anything like that. It's easy to use, very comfortable to use, and doesn't pull hair. None of that stuff that you obviously don't want to deal with. But, yeah, it's great. And then, of course, the great travel bag.
Yeah, that great travel bag. I need to get one of those. I think we're going to get some new swag and stuff like that. I actually have the Manscaped fingernail clipper kit. That's actually pretty decent. You know, the fingernail clippers, every now and then you might get yourself a little bit too close to the fingernail, and they actually do a pretty good job of avoiding that. They have a pretty good guide on their nail file, some precision trimmers for your beard, for your nose hair, stuff like that. But guys, yeah, 2020 was awful. So make sure your boys downstairs are refreshed and ready for new beginnings in 2021. Embrace the new year and new me mindset with Manscaped. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE at manscaped.com. Your family jewels will thank you. Again, 20% off and free shipping with the code HUDDLE at manscaped.com. Happy New Year to your boys. So, Erick, Senior Bowl, obviously, big ups to a lot of these players. There's a lot of guys that really made themselves money. I wrote down 15 names on each team, actually closer to 20 names on each team that really helped their stock. To narrow it down to 10 so we didn't cover a bunch of the same guys. Let's start with the national team, and I want your thoughts first. Let's just go a couple back and forth here, just quick notes and stuff like that. Starting with the national team, who's a few of the guys that you saw?
Well, the couple of receivers that really stood out, and I came into this liking Frank Darby out of Arizona State a little bit, but I had some questions about how quickly he can get separation. And the 1v1s that they had, reps that he had against the corners in the practice and everything, there was no issue there. He showed good burst out of his breaks. He was able to make some good catches. There is still an issue that showed up with his catch radius. If it's not very on target, he's going to have issues getting it. So that means that Denver can't draft him because Drew Lock's placement is terrible. But he's got decent speed to attack deep down the field. He's got decent speed to attack the middle of the field, to take screens and go get some chunk yardage. Definitely a versatile type weapon. I like him quite a bit. And then Dwayne Estridge, another receiver who's a little bit shifty, has a little bit better hands than KJ Hamler did. Not as fast as KJ Hamler, but can be used as that gadget type weapon there as well, being able to attack all levels of the field and on end arounds. And then on the defensive side of the ball, Dalen Hayes was a guy out of Notre Dame who I really didn't have a very high opinion of from watching his tape, but he had a really good Senior Bowl week, especially with his 1v1s against tackles. He was getting early wins, which in 1v1s in the pit, that's what you look for. Because sometimes these these one-on-ones, they can go be in 5-6 seconds, and that's not going to happen in the NFL. But it's what happens in like the first second, 2 seconds of it. And Dalen Hayes showed a lot more there than he ever did on tape. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to go watch a couple games of his that I didn't watch yet and see if maybe my opinion on him changes a little bit more, and kind of use the Senior Bowl as a way to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of a cross-checker, so to speak. And then another defensive back, anyways, is Demar Hamlin. He's a guy who he's very under the radar for me in this safety class. And I liked him a lot last year. I think he's a great fit for what the Broncos want to do. I think he's a guy who can come down. He can play your slot corner spot in a zone scheme specifically. But he can also play a deep cover too. He's not the toughest guy in the box, but that's okay because that's not how you should be using him. Not as a guy to, sorry about that, to be down in the box as a primary run defender. He can come up and help, of course, but you want to back away or in the slot more than anything.
Yeah. Demar Hamlin has been really kind of showing out. He's really overshadowed by his teammate Paris Ford, and that Pittsburgh defense has a lot of high quality players. There was a Pittsburgh defensive lineman, I forget his name right now off the top of my head, that was down there in Mobile that actually showed out pretty well as well. I'm going to start on the offensive side of the football for the national team as well. Thailand Wallace, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, absolutely shredded people this week. He was fantastic in his route running, sets guys up very well, gets a good clean inside break, and the thing that really caught my eye was there were several times on crossing routes and deep over routes where he would set guys up with that inside release and then look towards the outside like he's going to run a corner route and then shimmy shake and then get explosive coming across the middle of the field and created. There was one that I retweeted out from Brad Kelly on Twitter. Follow him, a really good guy. He tweeted this one out, and there was like 15 yards worth of separation from Thailand Wallace and the defensive back that was covering him. Probably not going to have that kind of separation in the NFL level, and especially with a safety over the top. But still, at the same time, it was impressive to see him continue with that explosion, especially coming off of a torn ACL in his junior year there. Sage Sarot, wide receiver out of Wake Forest, also had a pretty good week. Big physical guy, was making some really good catches down the field, showed his physicality off in one-on-ones very well. Not a guy that creates separation on a consistent level, but he did actually do a pretty good job down there as well. Romandre Stevenson, running back from Oklahoma, had a really good week, especially in pass protection and out of the backfield as a catcher. Was very impressed with him, as well as Michael Carter, who also had a really good week, running back from North Carolina. There was a couple of times where his vision was absolutely spectacular. He had a couple of really long runs, did really well in pass protection as well. James Hudson, the offensive tackle out of Cincinnati, had a pretty good week as well. Creed Humphrey, for my slip up here, I did call him the top interior offensive lineman last week on the podcast on Saturday. But he did show that he is probably the top center. If nothing else, he's the top center in this class. Unless you're going to have Rashawn Slater play center, because I think that he could do that as well. But Creed Humphrey, his pass protection snaps were very good. He moved laterally very well, mirrored very well. Those are just a few of the guys on the offensive side of the football. Eric, what else you got here?
Well, first I want to say is that Creed Humphrey, the top center, Josh Myers would like a word.
Okay. All right.
Landon Dickerson, when he's healthy, of course.
Yeah.
But anyways, couple last few other guys that I have. Derrick Barnes, he's a linebacker out of Purdue. He came in with a lot of questions about his play and coverage, some athletic concerns, but he looked very athletic. He looked very quick and agile with good range and coverage. And I saw someone tweet out that he only allowed, of all the targets he had, he only allowed one catch. and broke up like 4 passes. Like, it was really good numbers for, obviously it's a practice setting, but it's good numbers that speaks to the growth that he had there. Especially when you're able to see the technical aspects that improved. Khalil Herbert, he's probably my favorite running back in this class. Not my top guy, but I like him a lot. I like what he could be with Denver. I like him in the inside zone with the balance, the vision, all that just combining each other for the inside zone that Pat Shurmur likes to run. But he's also got the scheme versatility. So if the Broncos do find themselves installing a new offensive scheme next year, there's a good chance he can fit it because he can fit the outside zone. He can fit the power gap stuff. He can fit a little bit of everything. He's just got that wide range skill set. Then going to the offensive line, there were 3 offensive linemen on the national team that really stood out for me. Robert Jones, I think it was Rashad Weaver. They had some 1v1s, and Robert Jones completely stonewalled Rashad Weaver and had him ending up on the ground. It was a great rep from Jones where he's had great technique, great balance. Everything was great. I like the length that he has. And this is a guy that probably day 3 I'd be looking at as a developmental guy. There's some technical aspects that still need worked on, which is typical of smaller school guys. Jake Kurhan out of, I believe it's Cal. I might be mistaken on the school. Not 100% sure on that. He's a guy he's another one that I'll have to go back and double check the tape. I wasn't super high on him, but there was things to like. He could as a depth option, but this week he really stood up. He shut down a lot of these edge rushers. He probably had the most wins in 1v1s of all the tackles in the group, and so I like what I saw. Again, I got to go back and watch tape. He didn't look to be the longest. I can't remember what he came in with arm length. I think it was below 33 inches, which is the minimum threshold for a lot of teams. And yes, arm length for tackles does matter quite a bit. And the last guy, it was Adrian Ely, who, before we get to my biggest winner anyways, who last week on Saturday, I kind of shrugged off because I wasn't a big fan of him. I just didn't see much. On tape, he has a lot of experience. I think he started all 4 years at Oklahoma or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly, but he started almost every game, and he's still so raw. So you have major questions if there's an issue there with him picking up the technique and stuff. But this week at the Senior Bowl, his technique was almost flawless. Like, it was just, he made a huge step forward on the technical aspects of it, which is obviously what you want to see. It's what you want to show off during this week.
Yeah. So last couple guys that I have here, speaking of Rashad Weaver and getting bullied by, what was his name? I forget the name. I'm having a rough night right now. Rashad Weaver, anyways, there you go. Rashad Weaver actually had a really good week. Despite that one rap, he was creating pressure in one-on-ones. He was getting around the edge. He showed a lot of power. There was times where he was splitting the gaps and just blowing plays up at the line of scrimmage. This kid is really going to make a name for himself and did himself very well this week. The Ohio State linebackers really did well as well. Justin Hilliard showed very well in coverage. He's got a crazy athleticism. I think there's some size issues with him taking on blockers at the point of attack. I know Baron Browning came and blew up a running play against the fullback, but Justin Hilliard did really well on the edge, not coming off the edge as an edge defender, but coming around the edge and his run fits and whatnot like that. I did see a lot of there. Thomas Graham, the cornerback from Oregon, actually had a really good week. Luke Patterson actually highlighted him, and I kind of kept my eye out for him on that the other day. And he did really well in one-on-ones. Very physical kid. He's a little bit smaller, but still he's got a feisty attitude, and I really like him. Probably not the most fluid mover I've ever seen, but at the same time, he's got enough requisite athleticism to keep up with some guys. And the physicality at the catch point is something I really like with him. I think that's everybody I have. Now for my biggest winner here is the interior offensive lineman Quinn Miners from the University of Wisconsin Whitewater, Division III kid coming up here to the Senior Bowl and has absolutely destroyed some people in one-on-ones, in pass protection drills, and especially as a run blocker. He has multiple pancake blocks to his name this week. If you haven't seen anything about him, he's like 320 pounds, and he wears his shirt rolled up, so he's got his big, huge belly hanging out from underneath him to kind of grab some attention from everybody, because they're like, hey, check this guy out. Well, then he goes out and he plays the way that he did. This kid is rising massively. We're talking, he probably went from a late day 3 kind of a guy to being in the second round. He is the buzz of the ball right now. He really is creating so much hype for himself. He actually had an amazing day 1 and day 2. Well, then he actually broke his hand snapping the football and almost got into not really a fight, but he was arguing with Brian Flores on the sideline, very visibly upset that Brian Flores wasn't going to let him play. He said, "You're not going to play. You have a broken hand." Well, he's like, "No, I want to play." So this kid's got some fiery attitude. He's tough. He's an amazing run blocker, very strong. This kid rose and made himself a lot of money this weekend. As we're talking about the money makers, Eric,
I want to say is with Quinn Miners and that broken hand, he broke it during practice. And he finished practice.
Yeah.
He didn't come off the field. He finished practice with that. That's a toughness that you don't really see all that often. And it's one that you want to see, especially on your offensive line. Now, before we get to questions in the chat, I just want to get my big winner out of the way. I think it was Stephen Baumgartner who actually asked about him. But my biggest winner is that other Ohio State linebacker, Baron Browning, who he just everything. He showed everything that you want. He showed the ability to blitz off the edge. He showed the ability to blitz up the middle. He showed the ability to come in as a run defender, to take on blocks, stack and shed, drop in coverage. He showed everything you want. The sideline to sideline range, the range north and south, all of it. This is a guy who I thought maybe you can get early day 3, late day 2 if you want to be comfortable, but this is a guy that I could see going in the top, probably the top 50 picks. He really helped himself, showed a lot. And on top of all that, all the word has been is that he's absolutely killing his interviews. He's extremely versatile. He can do whatever, scheme versatile. He's got all the traits that you want to work with for a defensive coach. And again, that versatility and the scheme versatility, the role versatility, all of that is so valuable in the NFL now, especially with coaching changes happening so often. This is a guy that if I'm Denver, I would be hoping he's there with that second round pick and looking at taking him because he can fill a lot of the holes that Denver has in their defense because of his athleticism, his range, and his versatility.
No, you're absolutely right. I like Justin Hilliard there as well, but still Baron Browning, right? That's how you pronounce it. I always want to say Baron Browning for some reason. But anyways, Browning had an amazing week. Like I said, he went up against that, I think, as a Michigan fullback in a run fit and blew him back and literally knocked him on his ass. It was absolutely amazing to watch. Did really well in coverage as well. Like this kid's going to be special. He's going to be legit. Let's go before we get into the American League rosters. I'm going to grab some of these questions here. Started up at the top. Actually, we got a super chat from Joshua Shadow. Thanks, Milana. We need a new Champ Bailey. You think that cat from Alabama could fill those shoes? Yeah, if Denver ran a cover 3 scheme, I do believe that if he was in a cover 3 scheme or a press man scheme, that he would be absolutely amazing. I just don't see him he's got requisite athleticism, but you just don't see it on tape very much. And there's questions there. You got to project a little bit with Patrick Surtain Jr. It's not. I think that he can fit, but it's going to require a lot more of the 2-man stuff that we saw from Vic Fangio towards the end of the season than the true cover 4 boundary cornerback that you see with like Michael Ojemudia, AJ Bouye, the guys from Denver last year, and whatnot like that. I do like Patrick Surtain. I'm not going to say that I'm taking him off the Broncos board. He just doesn't fit to me, and that's an issue. Is I don't see the scheme versatility like I do with the guy that actually was brought up after that. By James Campbell and that cat from Virginia Tech, that cat being Caleb Farley.
Now, with Patrick Surtain, my biggest thing is if Denver goes to more press man or even off man that they kind of started to run towards late in the season, he's a fine pick.
Yep.
But you don't draft a bad scheme fit at corner and try to make him work, and Vic Fangio doesn't do that. You can look at all the corners that he's drafted, that he has been there when he's drafted. He's been stuck with bad fits and worked to make them work. But he has always voiced the opinion that you draft to fit your scheme. Always. And that's been every single defensive back selection has been a guy who can come in and fit his scheme. Not one that you got to work with and project a little bit to make fit, but one that fits him coming in. So if he's going back to more off man, I don't like Surtain for it. But if they're going to be using more press man, more off man, I like him fitting a little bit better with Denver that way. He's a talented corner. He's one I would be fine with at 9. I don't think you could trade back and get him. I just don't think the value is there for it. He's a good tackler. He's a good tackler. He's not afraid to come up against the run, but that doesn't change much when it comes to your coverage scheme because the coverage aspect of it is the most important thing for a corner. So you got to be able to fit your coverage scheme. And as I'm saying, he doesn't. And despite what some may think out there, that Denver isn't going George Payton. He's not going to ignore Vic Fangio's scheme this year and draft whoever. He's going to draft fits and draft players who fit the scheme that it currently is because while Vic Fangio may be on his way out, he's not. And they kept him around because they think that he can still turn it around and be the long-term coach. So they're going to give him the tools and the pieces to try and be successful this year.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you? And why wouldn't you let the coach that's there? Because why would you want to restart at the coaching position if you don't have to? I mean, everyone wants to preach continuity with the scheme and give Drew Lock some time to grow up and learn. Unless this team bombs and fails completely and they're back picking in the top 10 again, I don't imagine that they necessarily want to move on from Vic Fangio right now. So I don't necessarily understand that line of thinking. Let's go through the comment stream here really fast. I got to grab a couple of these. I'm going to grab this one from Dispatch Viking. Hey, guys, longtime listener, first time I've been able to catch it live. Love you guys. Excited to be here, united in orange. Hey, thanks for joining us. There's another one here first time. We had a couple of first-time listeners, well, long-time listeners, first-time guys getting in here live. John Bakke, yeah, long-time listener, first time being able to catch it live. Love you guys, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you guys for joining us all. Just a quick shout-out to everybody. Relo Takeover. Finally, I could watch it live. Buwana Beast, obviously, running things behind the scene. Mark Anthony, what's up, DVDD fam? We appreciate everybody for joining us tonight. Let's see here. Yeah, well, Relo, just keep on paying attention, man. Which players do we need to watch? These are the guys that we're getting at right here. Sadly, Dylan Von Arks cannot catch the Senior Bowl tomorrow. Unfortunately for you, that kind of sucks. Rod TV coming in here on Super Chat. Draft a quarterback in the first round. There's defense all over in the second and third rounds, or get Deshaun and allow a free agent to want to play with the Broncos because of Watson. Unfortunately, that's probably not going to happen. The way that it sounds, Deshaun Watson doesn't necessarily want to come to Denver. San Francisco is making a really huge push for Matthew Stafford as well, from what I understand. There was a tweet out there that said something like 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks in exchange for Matthew Stafford. And I'm not exactly sure the truth behind that, but it's something to monitor. There's also, I mean, it's hard to justify moving up in this draft to go get a young quarterback when, I mean, don't get me wrong. I want the Broncos to upgrade the quarterback position. I don't necessarily want them to go out and get an Andy Dalton or an Alex Smith or trade for Jared Goff. Like that's not, I really want Matthew Stafford, but that's probably unfortunately not going to happen. Trading up, it doesn't sound like George Paton's going to do that. It sounds like more than likely it's going to be trading down. That's just what he does. He wants more draft capital, more darts. The more darts that you have to throw at the dartboard, the more likely you're going to hit a bullseye. And that's almost exactly what he said. So it's Rickard Bohr coming in here. I see us trading back in the first round since everything we heard about Peyton. What are some interesting late first round guys that are good fits? This is actually one of Erick's guys and my guys as well. Joseph Osai, edge defender out of Texas. Erick, you want to speak on him just a little bit?
Yeah, he's a hybrid type that can drop into coverage and come up and obviously be a pass rusher. I think early on he's going to be more of the coverage type guy as you kind of develop his hands and everything and pass rush moves as he as a pass rusher. And it's going to take a little bit of time, but he's a guy who he can fit that Leonard Floyd type role that Vic Fangio likes to have in his defense.
Yep. All right, let's wrap it up here for a second because we got to make another quick shout out to another one of our great sponsors for this week at sportsbetting.com. So tonight's live stream podcast, guys, is brought to you by sportsbetting.com. Gambling is obviously now legal in the state of Colorado. We've been saying this for a few months now. And if you're looking to play to make watching your favorite sports a little bit more interesting, sportsbetting.com is your no-brainer choice and destination. And here's why. They have sharp odds and low juice. They're in-house bookmakers, and they're not a third-party provider of odds, which means they have reduced juice and the best prices. Hassle-free bonuses with a one-time rollover, meaning that the bonus money that you bet, you get it after one bet. And it's not going to be like 5 to 30 times. You're going to get it the first time that you bet it. The bonus money is going to come right to you. 24/7 live customer support. There's always a real person in the United States. Nobody with a crazy accent you're not going to be able to understand. It's somebody that's going to be able to help you and get you through whatever customer support needs that you have. We've all been frustrated by that before, so it's really nice to have that. But guys, here's the kicker. Right now, after you make your first deposit, sportsbetting.com will double your deposit up to $300. That's $300 in free bet credits at sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. sportsbetting.com/milehighhuddle. Go over that way, capitalize on $300 in free bet credits, and get 2021 rolling off on the right foot.
Now, I want to throw this out here real quick because I see it talking about the chat about Stafford and warm weather. I know who that report came from, but take it with a grain of salt. The Stafford family is big on skiing. They spend a lot of time in Aspen. Maybe the issue is that they don't want to play in potential bad weather. But yeah, it's not a thing that they want the warm weather. They spend a lot of time in Aspen skiing during the winter months and everything like that.
Yeah, that just doesn't necessarily make sense to me, given his past. And like you said, spending a bunch of time in Aspen and the off season, they have a house there. Like it doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense there. Now, Eric, let's move this forward just a little bit. We're at the 25-minute mark. Let's get through our American League rosters, the 10 guys, and I'm going to start us off here on this one. Start us off with Jamie Newman, the quarterback, and he's actually from Wake Forest. Well, technically from Georgia, but he opted out, never played. He's wearing a Wake Forest helmet down there at the Senior Bowl. Had a really good first day. And the thing that kind of impressed everybody was his arm talent. And you didn't see it on tape, but his arm talent was actually really good. He had a lot of requisite zip on his throws. He could make pretty much every throw you want him to. Really nice touch pushing the ball down the field. However, day 2 and 3, he had some issues. The footwork got a little bit sloppy. He was late getting the ball out of his hands, making bad reads, bad decisions. He threw a lot of interceptions, but still, the fact that he came out there, competed very well, and actually impressed a lot of people with his arm talent, and still the athleticism that he had and showed on tape at Wake Forest, he made himself a little bit of money. Like I was figuring 5th, 6th round, he might touch the tail end of day 2 now. Maybe. I'm not sure if he's going to get there. But he's a good developmental project, kind of a quarterback, requisite athleticism, has a really high ceiling. The problem is he's got a really low floor as well. So we'll see how that all plays out. I did like Jamie Newman, though, especially on day 1. Another guy here that I was not impressed with that I watched previously, and I've talked to Eric about this before, and he disagrees with me on the comparison that I have. Trey McKitty, the tight end out of Georgia as well. The games that I had seen were of him in 2019 at Florida State, and I just didn't see the requisite athleticism of a guy to be a quality move tight end, but he was a really nice blocker. I kind of equated him to Virgil Green, but I forget that Virgil Green was actually a really good athlete. McKitty was down in Mobile and made a bunch of one-handed catches, especially in tight coverage. He was really, really good. There was a couple of them. One that actually, the one-handed catch that I saw was from Mac Jones, another guy. We'll get to him here in just a few minutes. That was just perfect spot. The coverage was insanely tight. He reached out, plucked that ball out of midair like it was just straight handed to him. Kylan Hill, running back, Mississippi State, did a really good job in pass protection. I was impressed with him. As far as other guys, there was a pair, I'll say on the offensive side before I throw it to Eric here, a pair of Clemson wide receivers, Amari Rogers and Cornell Powell. Those guys were dominant in one-on-ones, creating a lot of separation really quick in the rep. They did a really good job. There was one from, I think it was Cornell Powell. It was a squeak motion or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it is. A squirt release is what it was called from the Clemson offense on a slant route where he actually worked to the outside laterally and then created separation moving back on the slant. And it was absolutely impressive. Amari Rogers doing a really good job as far as being explosive and getting around the edge on some end rounds. He did a really good job running routes as well. Showed a pretty decent catch radius from what I understand too. So Eric, what about on the offensive side for the American team for you?
Well, obviously, I'm going to be talking about McCorkle Jones, which, by the way, that's what he shall forever be known as. He's not Mac Jones. He's the great McCorkle. That's his middle name, by the way, Michael McCorkle. So I liked what I saw out of him. He showed a little bit more athleticism than we ever see on tape. And part of the reason why we didn't see it on tape is because it wasn't really needed when playing at Alabama. You have these great receivers that he just got to be able to trust. We didn't have to see that athleticism out of him. We were able to see a little bit there today. But what we know about is what he showed, and he displayed it, and he cemented himself there, that he can make the reads, he can make the throws. The arm isn't the strongest, but he can throws with such timing and precision that he doesn't have to have the strongest arm. And that the arm, it's not that the arm is terrible. The arm is just fine for the NFL, and plenty of quarterbacks have made a living in the NFL with arms that are just fine because they throw with the timing, they throw with their reads, they throw with precision. We'll see what happens with I almost called him Daniel Jones, with Mac Jones there. But he's drawn some comparisons to Daniel Jones and with his arm, because Daniel Jones, he didn't have viewed as the strongest arm, but he throws with such precision and timing that he's able to make some good throws. Now, is Daniel Jones the greatest of quarterbacks? No, but he's showing progress and at least decent capabilities there in New York this year, especially. Josh Palmer out of Tennessee, he's a wide receiver that I didn't like him very much, but he had a huge week. I wasn't sure exactly what type of receiver he was when I watched him on tape at Tennessee, which is a big thing for me. You always want to kind of know what they bring, because we talk about scheme a lot, but when you're talking about wide receivers, it's more about your role and what your skill set is and how it complements others on the team. So not knowing his really made him a difficult evaluation. And he kind of answered that question a little bit at the Senior Bowl. He's got the speed to challenge deep, but he's not a speedster per se. But he's got the size to be decent on those jump ball gets. And he's got decent routes. He's got decent quickness, decent get off. He's a guy that you'd be looking at probably as a number 4, number 5 receiver to come in and give you like 20 catches a year, which is just fine. And that's something that can probably get him drafted with hope for more, probably day 3, which is better than being undrafted, which is where I had him at originally. Then tight end Noah Gray out of Duke. He was one who just made catch after catch after catch after catch for them. He's a converted quarterback, and his ability to read defenses, to find the soft spot in zones, and all that jazz just were constantly on display. The blocking was not good, but he showed the receiving ability to go and be workable in the scheme and everything. And then a couple offensive linemen before I pass it off back to you for the defensive side of the ball is David Moore, who actually ended up winning the offensive line of the week for the American team, which by the way, Quinn Miners just was announced for the national team. Your biggest winner. He had a great week. There were some things that he had some issues with speed on the interior defensive line, but he was so strong that he was able to just punish people, and he did well inside at guard or outside at left tackle or right tackle. He did really well for just wherever he lined up at. And then Dante Smith, before he broke his thumb, he was having a really good week. I think he probably would have won offensive lineman of the week if he didn't get hurt after the day 2 of practice. He had a good again, he has the length. He had the longest arms at the Senior Bowl, and he showed that length. I did miss one other offensive guy, Larry Roundtree, the Missouri running back. He's a guy who I viewed as a poor man Royce Freeman, but after the week that he had, I'm going to have to go back and watch because he looked much better than Royce Freeman has ever looked, even going back to college. Really good routes, really quick hands to go out and snatch the ball, turn up field, great vision as a runner, just all the traits that you want to see to be that versatile kind of 3-down back that you want in the NFL. I think that he'll probably be a day 3 pick, and I think that he still will be, but instead of late day 3, probably early day 3.
Yeah. All right, so defensively, we're getting a lot of questions about the safeties and the secondary players. I've got one for you, and specifically, I'm going to grab there it is, Meek 555 with a $2 super. What are the safety options in the draft and the free agent? I love this safety class, guys. I absolutely love the safety class. There's a pair of them on the American team. I'm going to talk about the first one here, Hamza Nazarel from Florida State. Incredibly long, guys. Came in 6'4", I think 215, somewhere around in that area. I don't exactly remember. But he had an 84.5-inch wingspan and 34-inch arms. The kid has tackle arms at the safety position, and he is very fluid. His hips move very well. Requisite athleticism you need to play up high, and I think he could play a single high safety role if you wanted to. I would prefer him as a middle of the field open, cover 2, cover 4 kind of a guy. But he can also play down in the box. The length that he has, the ability to shed some blocks. He actually went out there and really impressed with his hip work in the position drills. That's a big guy for me. To get away from the safeties for really quick. Actually, no, let's continue here. Trevon Moehrig from TCU. That's probably the top safety in the draft right now. My guy, we'll get to him here in just a few minutes. Ardarius Washington, also from TCU. Paris Ford, we talked about him. Damar Hamlin, Hamza Nasrulladein. There's another couple in there. Richard LeCount, the third from Houston. This safety class is really fun to watch, and I'm excited to get into that. But as far as the rest of the American team on the defensive side of the football, Aaron Robinson, cornerback from Central Florida, had a really good week. He's a very physical corner. I like the length. I like the hip fluidity. I think that he's probably going to be a second-round pick now after this week if he wasn't already. Carlos Basham from Wake Forest had a huge week coming off the edge. He did a really good job in one-on-ones, creating instant pressure. Did a really good job against the run as well from what I saw. Jabril Cox, linebacker from LSU, big athlete, big mover, is very good coverage linebacker. There are people raving about him potentially being in the 3rd round now. He made himself a lot of money. But before we get to my big winner, Eric, let me just throw it over to you really fast.
I only have, outside of my big winner, I only have 3 guys on the defensive side of the ball I'm going to look at. Jordan Smith, who Dane Brugler of The Athletic actually had to the Broncos in the 2nd round of one of his mock drafts recently. He really showed up, and he showed the versatility to drop into coverage, to go out and cover the flats, just do everything that you wanted to be. Showed up as a good run defender. There was some technical issues when it came to as a pass rusher. He got stuck on some blocks and couldn't get off just because the handwork wasn't quite there. But the athleticism and the explosion really helped him just still get by the offensive lineman pretty much. And then William Bradley King, he's another one. He's very long, very athletic, great burst and explosion, being able to convert speed to power very well. He put a lot of offensive linemen on their heels and just drove through them, and really didn't have to show his athleticism to get around the corner. But again, he's another one he's going to need some technical work.
He's got good bend too. I saw there was a rep that he actually bent around the corner and came. It looked like he was running horizontally underneath a table when he came around the corner. It was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, he can get that 45-degree angle you want to get underneath the tackle's arms. And then Peyton Turner out of Houston. He's a guy he is the type of player that I think Bronco fans wanted DeMarcus Walker to be. He's a little bit lighter at about 270 pounds, but he can play inside and outside and get great pressure, and he's not weak against the run. He is what Bronco fans wanted DeMarcus Walker to be. I like him. I don't really know if he has a fit in Vic Fangio's scheme, because DeMarcus Walker really didn't have much of a fit when he was playing. It was more out of necessity than anything. So it's interesting to see if Denver will look at him. I don't think he would, but I think that he has the potential to go out there and be a good defensive line edge rusher, depending on where he goes. Scheme is going to matter for him as well at that weight, because he's kind of a tweener.
Yeah. So who's your big winner from the American team? I'll let you go first.
Well, my big winner is another guy who I think is even more in that mold of DeMarcus Walker, but I think that he's got more of that Draymond Jones type at a smaller weight. And that's Cam Sample, who is actually the defensive lineman of the week for the American team, right? That's what we're on?
Yep.
Yeah, he was the defensive lineman for the week for the American team, and there was actually a cut-up of every single 1v1 that he had against offensive linemen, and he killed them every single one. There was one where he got stonewalled by the offensive lineman, and it was a thing of him getting in through the shoulder or getting past the shoulder of him, and the offensive lineman basically had to hold him and just stop him, and he still just kind of carried the offensive lineman with him. He was great going through guys, going around guys. It didn't matter. And the best thing that I saw is with the trench battles, the trench 1v1s, it's all about that first 2 seconds, and he was getting by them in that first second, right off the snap, the explosion off of it, the quick hands to swim over him, to rip underneath him, whatever it was. It was super quick, super efficient, and just getting right to the quarterback.
Man, I was really impressed with the reps that I did see from Cam Sample and him getting underneath and using his leverage. Like, this kid was doing a really good job. He had a rep against Deontay Brown, the offensive guard from Alabama, where he just blew him off the ball, got underneath, and actually showed some dip coming from an interior defensive line spot. It was just absolutely fantastic. Now, my big winner of the week is arguably the guy that had the best week of the Senior Bowl, in my opinion, and he is my guy. And everybody knows, if you have paid attention to Dove Valley Deep Divers for the last year and a half, Richie Grant, the safety from UCF, is my dude, and he did everything right this week at the Senior Bowl. He had multiple interceptions, multiple pass breakups in the one-on-ones. It showed amazing physicality. His hips were great. He got rid of that flat on your feet and kind of lay off the ball that he had shown at UCF. Richie Grant is my dude, and quite honestly, I'm going to have to go and reevaluate Trevon Moehrig, because I'm at that point now, especially after watching him this week. Richie Grant might be my safety one in this class. And honestly, after the showing that he has had this week, it would not surprise me to see him crack the first round, which is unfortunate for the Denver Broncos, because if he does fall to 40, I'm running to the podium sprint. He is a perfect scheme fit, very physical, very aggressive. I wish he would bring his arms more when he tackles. He has some bad technique there. But at the same time, this week at the Senior Bowl and his ability to mirror in man coverage, play off zone, identify what's going on in front of him. He's a former wide receiver that I actually didn't know that. I didn't know he was a former wide receiver, but he understands how to attack the football, closes ground great. This kid is legit, guys. And I've been pounding the table for him since January of last year. This is my dude, and I am hype. I am here for all of the Richie. We stand Richie Grant in this house. We really do. Man, I love him. I love this kid. Let's get to some questions here. Todd Ostendorf, actually, any Iowa tackles we can get? There is one, but he had a really bad week at the Senior Bowl. All Eric Jackson was absolutely awful. And they tried him inside. They tried him at right tackle, at left tackle. He actually pushed a rusher, I can't remember who it was, into Jamie Newman that caused a strip sack.
He flung Wyatt Hubert into Jamie Newman for a strip sack. He was getting beat so bad. His reaction was to fling the edge rusher at the quarterback.
Yep. It was absolutely terrible. The other offensive lineman that had a bad week was Trey Smith, I think is who it is. The ECU interior offensive lineman, right? Am I thinking the right guy? Yeah. He had a
Tennessee.
Okay. I forget the schools. I don't do whatever. Not really. Quincy Roche, that was another guy we wanted to talk about actually here. I missed him on my list. He had a really good week, very quick, it showed really good leverage. Weighed in very small, though. He was only like 238, I think is what his official weigh-in was. But he did a really good job, explosive off the snap, showed that bend that you really like from him. He probably made himself some money to push himself up the board a little bit higher on day 2. I thought originally day 3, but I think that he could probably get into the top end of the 3rd round. Did a really good job. I was impressed with Quincy Roche. Smash like button.
Going back to Larry Jackson, he's a guy who he didn't play right tackle at Iowa when Tristan Wirfs was there because he wasn't comfortable on the right side. That's a big red flag there. He is only comfortable on the left side. He wasn't comfortable inside at the Senior Bowl this week, which led to a lot of issues. Another red flag, which basically signaling that he's limited to a left tackle only, which is very terrible for a guy you'd be looking at to be your backup swing tackle. And on top of that, he's got 32.5-inch arms, which is a huge red flag for being a tackle in the NFL.
Yeah.
Very rarely do you see success from an offensive tackle when they're under 33-inch arms.
Yeah. What about Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama? He weighed in and measured very well. I mean, this kid looks like a gorilla. He's huge. And the problem is, though, he was not very good. They moved him all over the place, played him inside, played him at right tackle as well. He was not
want to deal with the guy with his versatile skill set. I mean, he has that experience, so.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fine. But he struggled in pass protection, from what I understand. And there was a lot of guys that were getting around underneath him. As a run blocker, though, he had a monster week. There was a couple times with the American team, that he was just bullying people and driving people to the ground all over the place. He had a really good week from what I understand as far as a run blocker goes. Pass protection, no, not so much. He struggled against those quicker edge rushers. Let's see here. Grab another couple of them if we can. I saw one earlier that I wanted to grab here. What's up, Tim? Nice to see you, buddy. Thanks for the hat. Coors original, actually. Jimmy G and Jared.
I'm drinking water, in case you're wondering, just water.
I would rather have Jimmy G than Jared Goff. I'd rather have neither, quite honestly. If you're gonna,
if those are your two choices, I'll take your two choices.
I'll take the third, Drew Lock. We'll stick it with Drew Lock here.
It's surprising. There are quarterbacks that I wouldn't take over Drew Lock. Who would have guessed?
Yeah, no doubt. What DBs and safeties up their value this week? There was another couple. There was another one on the national team. Darren Hall from San Diego State had a couple of really good reps in one-on-ones. Made a really good play where he mirrored off the snap, actually turned and got in phase, pinned the arm down, and ran and leaned his body in, created a pass breakup on a deep shot against who was that? I don't remember who it was. But he actually made a couple of really decent plays. Again, Demar Hamlin, we already talked about him. There was a couple of different defensive backs and safeties that really helped themselves. Afitu Melifonwu actually had a really good week, and they played him a lot at cornerback, which is something that, Eric, I know that you had questions about. I did as well. Just that where do you play him? He played at cornerback and actually stayed in phase really well, especially on day one. He was pretty impressive from what I understand. Royce to 5'9". Could Jabril Cox fill that coverage linebacker role we desperately need? Yeah, I think so. I absolutely think so.
He definitely can.
Eric, go ahead.
Well, he's got the athleticism you need. And the concerns I have when watching him on tape is a little bit more against the run. He's got the quick, he's got the range, he's got the agility to hang in coverage. There's some issues of him having to make better reads when in coverage and not being as late sometimes to his zone. But those are things that you can coach and fix up.
Yeah. Paris Ford is like a Kareem Jackson type. Yeah, I see that after going back and watching him. I think, obviously, my dude Richie Grant is the Kareem Jackson clone. They're really close to the same size, really close to the same play style. I love Richie Grant. Seriously, we stand him in this household. Were there any rushing nose tackle interior defensive line guys which showed legitimate promise to spell Purcell and get better pressure? That's actually a good question, because a lot of the guys, from what I understand, that were at the Senior Bowl this year, they were more the 5 and 7 techniques. There wasn't really a whole lot of interior defensive lineman nose tackle types, and there was a bunch of younger, smaller guys that were playing out of position more than anything. So the interior of the defensive line class this year didn't actually look necessarily too great, from what I understand. Eric, do you know anything more about that? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
At the Senior Bowl, the only guy who would really stand out for that would be Marvin Wilson.
Yeah.
But the issue is that Denver doesn't use a nose tackle all that often. They're just in sub package so often, so you don't really need somebody to spell Mike Purcell as a nose tackle. Guy that's 320 plus pounds. You don't need that. That's Mike Purcell. Let him go be there in the run. He's only playing about 50% of the snaps anyways. And then when you pull him out, you're putting him in a smaller guy, about 300 pounds, a guy like Draymond Jones, who really killed it this year, getting interior pressure when he was healthy, a Shelby Harris type. And there was plenty of options like that. I think that there's obviously a lot better options out that weren't at the Senior Bowl. But a guy like Cam Sample, who he can work, maybe you can bulk him up about 10 pounds or so. And then there was another guy whose name escapes me, who had a very solid showing as being one of those guys who's about 290 pounds. I can't remember his name, though.
Yeah. Who would be a better fit, Chaz Sarot or Jabril Cox? That's actually a good question. Because
it depends. Do you want it now or in 2 years from now?
That's exactly what I was going to say.
If you want it, if in 2 years from now, if you're willing to wait for that, Chaz Sarot's your better option. If you want it sooner, Jabril Cox.
Yeah, Jabril Cox is much more refined. Chaz Sarot, actually a former quarterback that's only made the transition to linebacker a couple of years ago, so he's very raw in his reads. Not a very instinctual player, so it's going to take him some time, and he's got to work on the technical aspect of it. But he's got all the requisite athleticism. He's long and lengthy. I liked his arm length, and he does a really good job as far as being physical in the running game. But the biggest thing about him is, he'll stick his nose in there, but he doesn't know how to tackle. So you're going to have to work with him. Nick Bolton, I don't know enough about him yet. Eric, go ahead.
He's got short arms. That's the biggest thing. He can work in coverage, but his lack of length is really going to hurt him. There's another question here that I want to take. We get it every week, so I just want to get the answer out of here real quick. Todd Ostendorf asks, why take a wide receiver? Don't we have enough? Sure. If Denver keeps everyone, sure. But Tim Patrick sounds like he may be on his way out, either by trade or getting signed on a restricted free agent tender elsewhere, which Denver won't be able to match. Cortland Sutton's coming back from an injury. He's a free agent after this year. Who knows what he's going to be coming back from his injury, and his cost may not align with what Denver's going to get, so they got to replace that. I know they just invested first and second round picks in KJ Hamler and Jerry Jeudy. Both of them had major drop issues that we don't know if they're going to fix yet. So getting another receiver kind of hedges your bet against them a little bit. Then you have Desean Hamilton, who I don't think makes the Broncos regular season roster. You have Tyree Cleveland, who he sure had a couple good games late this year, but we don't know what he's going to do in an expanded role. So again, you can get a guy to help hedge your bet there a little bit. Deontay Spencer, he's not good. I don't know why we tried him out as a returner this year. He did have, I think, 2 good returns, but you can get that from somebody else who offers up a lot more on offense than he does.
Yeah.
It's just, it looks good on paper when you look at it, but when you really think about it and apply logic to it, the wide receiver core it's not a huge strength really, because they have so many questions over the next 2 years. And as the comment that was just there, I don't see it now,
Terry,
was keeping strength to strength. Yeah, you definitely want to try to do that. Denver does that with their defensive line. That's why they drafted a defensive lineman in the 3rd round the last 2 years. They're trying to keep that defensive line of strength. They are looking towards their future hole that they're having there. Shelby Harris being a free agent, Jarrell Casey last year being a free agent, Derek Wolfe, all these moving parts there. They're trying to keep that going so they don't have it become a major weakness right away. And that's what you'd be doing at receiver. Like, I'm not saying you take one early, but you get to day 3, you definitely can start looking.
Yeah, unless it's going to be Jalen Waddle at 9, then I'm about that life if we absolutely have to. Shi Smith, wide receiver from South Carolina, he had another big week. He was another one of those big Senior Bowl winners for the American team. I was actually going to talk about him tonight, but the more that I got to looking through it, I wanted to grab Amari Rogers and Cornell Powell from Clemson, just because they both showed out massively. The wide receivers this year were absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Thailand Wallace had a good one. Sarot had a good one. Dwayne Estridge was amazing. Shi Smith did a really good job with his physicality. He showed really good route running, good patience in his routes. Speed variation just showed a really good. I don't think he dropped the football from what I understand. And actually was fairly decent as a blocker as well. He would fit. I'm not sure exactly where he goes because I need to watch some more of him and get a better idea about the guy. But from what I understand, he actually had a really good week this week. Eric, what do you think of Shi Smith?
I like him. I like what he showed as a route runner. I like what he showed with his ability to attack all 3 levels of the field. He's going to get labeled as those small gadget types, but he's really not that. He's really not that. He's definitely more refined as a receiver than most of these smaller gadget types really are. And I think that's something that's going to bring a little bit more value to his game than some of these other guys who are those smaller gadget types. Is you definitely want them to be a little bit more refined and see if they can't work in other ways instead of working in other ways and trying to refine them as a receiver. We see time and time again that not really pan out in the NFL. So I like what he showed. He definitely helped himself, and it was a good week for him. It's going to be interesting to see where he's going to end up getting drafted because this receiver class is actually pretty strong with a lot of good talent day 2 and day 3.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. To kind of break off on that, what about a Fitu Melifonwu? Kind of talked about him a little bit earlier. Long, lengthy. I think he came in at 6'3", 6'4", something like that. Played at cornerback, played at safety. They put him all over the defense, and he actually had a really good week. I think he fits in Denver, but it's hard to project the role because you don't know if he's going to play on the boundary at cornerback. I don't think he could play in the slot, or if you're going to slide him back as a depth safety. Unfortunately, even though I think he fits. I don't think that he's gonna that the Broncos are gonna look at him just because you don't know exactly how to use him there. He would be a nice chess piece for sure. I want to grab this one from Richie Rich here. Eric, you called out Tim Patrick likely being gone. I actually agree with Eric on this one. Even though you think it's a mistake, apparently. Any guys who are wide receivers like him who showed out. I had one earlier as far as my offensive guys on the national team. Sage Sarot from Wake Forest is a guy that fits that kind of same mold. Bigger bodied guy, decent route runner, gets open quickly, very physical at the catch point. Another guy that, Eric, I know you're not necessarily as high on because he doesn't do as good a job of creating separation. Nico Collins, wide receiver from Michigan. He had a rough week this week. Did have a really nice catch in one-on-ones on the sideline where he got his toes down on a post corner route. It was actually pretty decent. Eric, I know there was another one that you had sent to me in our group chat. It might have been Sage Sarot actually, or there was another one too.
It was Sage Sarot.
Okay.
Yeah, to replace him, you want to get a guy who can separate. That's the biggest thing. That's the name of the game for receivers in the NFL anymore. And actually, there was a study done looking at receivers who were drafted in the first 3 rounds. And all those who had issues struggling with separating in college never had more than 200 yards receiving in the NFL.
Wow.
So I'll have to try to find that and send that to you. So, which is a big reason why I highlight the ability to get separation.
Oh, I get that. This was a conversation that went back and forth in our group chat there for a little bit. So sorry to interrupt you. I didn't mean to do that. The ability to create separation, I hold that high. But the big thing is the physical tools at the catch point. I like big catch radius, physical guys that can go and high point the football. Yes, I want them to be able to separate. I do appreciate a quality route runner. I think adding that extra aspect, that big body guy like a Cortland Sutton, who turned into a really good route runner, and when he was at SMU, he was not a very good route runner, and he turned into a good one. But the big thing that elevated him was the fact that he had a big catch radius and a big body and was very physical at the catch point. That's something I value very highly with my wide receivers. Eric, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'd actually lost my train of thought now. But yeah, there's a lot of receivers you can look at to replace Tim Patrick. Guys like Anthony Schwartz, if you want to bring a little bit more speed. You don't need to bring in a guy exactly like him because his skill set is very similar to Cortland Sutton's. You can find somebody who's a little bit more complimentary. Definitely gives Denver options with what they want to do. And I just want to be clear, I'm not saying he's 100% gone. I'm just saying that based on things I've heard, if Denver gives him even a second-round tender, I've heard there's a lot of teams interested, which could give Denver another second-round pick if they actually sign them. Because if a team does offer him a contract on a tender, I don't see how Denver can match.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I am 100% in agreement with you. If they offer him $9-10 million a year, which is what quality number 2 wide receivers are getting pretty much right now, they're just not going to be able to do that if they want to try to keep this defense intact. It's another thing that I wanted to talk to you about. We'll get to that here in just a little bit, probably after the show's over. But to be able to make everything work, paying Tim Patrick $10 million and then having to go into Cortland Sutton's contract negotiation where if he does stay in Denver, we're talking $16-17 million a year. Like, this guy's going to be paid a lot of money. And to invest that kind of capital, financial capital anyways, in the wide receiver position when you've also got Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler potentially needing deals here in the next few years. I just don't think that that's a prudent move or a feasible move from the Broncos standpoint, especially given the ownership situation, cash flow, stuff like that is another topic in and inside itself. A couple more here before we get out of here, guys. We got about 4 minutes left here. DNV coming in here. John, I saw you showed this one. I want to grab this. If we can get Landon Dickerson in round 2 to 3, that would be a steal. Eric, what do you think?
I like Landon Dickerson. Medicals are going to need a lot of vetting on it because there's a lot of medical history there. I like the fact that when he was down at the Senior Bowl, he was off to the side coaching other offensive linemen. He couldn't partake because of the injury he's still recuperating from. But yeah, I like that. I like the fact that he's a leader. That I like his play. I think he's much better than Lloyd Cushenberry. But again, all comes back to the medicals.
Yeah. Nazarel Dies coming in here. Sorry if I butchered your name. Would you be surprised if Denver takes Jalen Waddle at 9 if he's there? I would be, but I wouldn't hate it. Let me just say that. I would be surprised if they took Jalen Waddle because I don't think that they necessarily need to. However, if they did do that, I would not be surprised, especially if they run it back with Drew Lock. Like, quite honestly, build the nest, surround the guy with as much talent as you possibly can. If that guy is there, he offers you a different skill set than nobody else on the roster does right now. Like, I love Jalen Waddle. Don't get me wrong. I actually had him as one of my top 5 my guys in a podcast we did a couple weeks ago. Go check that out, guys. That was a big roundtable discussion with all the hosts on Mile High Huddle. 5 my guys. I had Jalen Waddle at number 5. So yeah, I would be surprised if they did it, but I wouldn't hate it. Kyle Pitts at 9, probably not. Eric,
hey, I would love it. I said this last week. If you're running it back with Drew Lock, despite how terrible he was, which was his fault, not the offensive coaches. It's not the coordinator's fault that Drew Lock can't read a defense or read a full field. But his most success came when they limit him to half a field with 2 tight ends out there on the field. And Kyle Pitts would be able to help go towards that if you really want to run it back and give him the best chance to succeed. Not saying that's the case, but yeah, I wouldn't mind Pitts there for that reason.
Yeah. It says which comment did you want to grab there, Eric, as our last one? Let's grab that really fast.
I actually kind of tease it. Let me go back here and let me find it here. Black Knight 2232 says, I know we were talking about a Senior Bowl and all that, but what are some names we could look at to replace our OC? Why? He wasn't the issue with the Broncos offense this year. Drew Lock was. He was statistically a bottom 5 quarterback in every single statistical category except for play action, which that would suggest that's the outlier, which probably means he's a bad quarterback. Now, I know a lot of people want to sit there and hang on to, this quarterback became good after 3 years, or this quarterback became good in 3rd year. And Josh Allen and all these other outliers who take leaps and act like Josh Allen didn't show progress his 1st year or show progress his 2nd year with terrible weapons around him. Drew Lock had amazing weapons around him, even with Cortland Sutton's injury, and he still was bad. He had the highest rating of off-target throws beyond the line of scrimmage. He almost basically killed Jerry Jeudy's season because his catches were the most off-target targets for all receivers in the NFL this year was Jerry Jeudy. What was it? Go ahead. You actually had the stat. Go ahead.
I had the stat. It was the highest percentage of quarterback caused incompletions of any wide receiver in the NFL last year. There's an article at milehighhuddle.com talking about Pro Football Focus naming Jerry Jeudy as one of the 2021 breakout stars from the 2020 draft class. And yeah, Jerry Jeudy had a 17.6% drop percentage. It was the highest in the NFL since I think 2010 of any wide receiver that had at least 100 targets in a single season. So 17.6% drop rate percentage this year was the second highest in the NFL. Second only to KJ Hamler, his teammate, and also rookie wide receiver for the Denver Broncos. But there was another part of that came back. So it was the highest percentage of quarterback fault incompletions for Jerry Jeudy of any wide receiver in the NFL. Like that's how bad it was for the he had 200 total yards, like almost 200 total yards of expected air yards after completion that was taken off of his stat sheet because of inaccurate quarterback play and drops. Like take out the Houston and Carolina game, and what is Drew? A bad quarterback, guys.
And
it's a bad quarterback.
My final point here is I'm not saying Pat Shurmur's some great offensive coordinator, as a lot of people have taken my defense of him over the months to be. He has a lot of issues. I don't think he's a good offensive coordinator. But this year with the Broncos offense, the issue was luck. Period. It should have been clear as soon as they went to a double read, single or high-low dump-off offense when Drew Lock started looking good. That should have been the obvious sign that, hey, this kid likely isn't it.
Yeah. And here we go down this rabbit hole.
Erick Trickel is a fake scout, so don't listen to what he says. Last year, mock draft, he hit on no one. First of all, that's not true. Second of all, people can think I'm terrible. People can think I'm fake. Don't care.
Yeah.
If you don't like me, don't watch.
I was going to say, thanks for joining us, Broncos 24/7. We appreciate you for coming in here and joining in the conversation. But anyways, guys, that's gonna do it for us before we get get ourselves into any kind of trouble here. I guess I missed that one there. Dylan Von Ark says we're spitting facts here, so I appreciate you, Dylan. Also, Beartooth is freaking amazing. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for us on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. Thank you guys for watching us. You guys can follow us on Twitter by finding me at Sanderson MHH and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Also, guys, while you're on the Twit machine, make sure you follow at DVDD_pod. That is the easiest way to keep up with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Wait, stop, pause. Kenneth Booker coming in here with $2 super. What do you think Jaden Daniels in 2021 if Locke falls off? Erick, I'm not sure if I know who he's talking about here.
Is he's the Arizona State quarterback? I'm trying to think. I think that's who it is, but I'm not positive of him. It would need to be a big offensive scheme change, obviously, and if Denver's in a position to probably draft him, it's probably coming. If I'm thinking of the right guy, I'm not positive of it, but yeah, I think that's who it is.
Oh.
Hey, thank you guys for the love. I wasn't saying that to it. My philosophy is I know people don't like me, and if they don't like me, don't watch or read what I say.
Yeah. That's pretty much where we've always remained at. Anyways, now let's get the rest of these matters of business out of the way as we close the showdown. Again, at DVDD_pod, the easiest way to keep up with what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. Also, while you're at it, at Mile High Huddle for instant news and analysis. That's some other account on your Denver Broncos, anything instant news and analysis, breaking news, film breakdowns, anything like that from your favorite Mile High Huddle personalities like myself, like Erick, Nick, and Carl, Chad, and Zach. The whole gang is over there. Again, shout out to Manscaped for sponsoring tonight's live stream. Guys, if you're on Facebook users, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. Click that blue Become a Supporter button for Kelberman's Corner. Every, I think, Sunday is when they drop on that. Also, guys, if you're in need of one of these Dove Valley Deep Divers hats, huddleuppod.com. Get your merch on. That's the merch tent. You got hats, t-shirts, face masks, coffee cups, hoodies, anything to suit your fancy to represent all of your favorite Mile High Huddle podcast. This one goes out to Tim Wenz, by the way. Shout out to Tim Wenz. Again, thanks to sportsbetting.com for sponsoring the show tonight.
Real quick, Tim Wenz, he's that Montana State fan, right?
Yeah. No, he's definitely a Bobcats fan. Most certainly a Bobcats fan. Anyways, if you guys are not willing to go to huddleuppod.com, become a Facebook supporter, the easiest ways that you guys can help support and grow the show. Everyone should be doing this by now. Subscribe wherever you guys are watching this or listening to this podcast to Mile High Huddle. Like every video you guys see and share it. Share it to everyone, especially if you love it. Share it to everybody in Broncos country. Get as many eyes on this stuff as this great content as you possibly can. Now, Eric, couple of matters of business on our personal end here. Last night, Eric and I sat down and we went through the top 150 players on your big board. Roughly consensus top 150, and split them in half. Eric's going to take 75. I'm going to take 75. We're going to be pumping out scouting reports at milehighhuddle.com. A bunch of videos coming your guys' way on YouTube as well. Make sure you guys stay in tune for that. Eric's got a couple of series that he's got to get worked on, some group stuff. But I will be starting individual scouting reports, starting with my guy, Richie Grant, probably on Sunday. So keep your eyes out for that. Eric, before we get out of here, though, any last words?
Yeah, apparently it's the easiest thing to blame the quarterback and not the coaches, even though it happens to be the coaches who always take the blame and not the quarterback. News to me. Anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching. As he said, we are trying to have a good friend of the podcast, Luke Poglaze, on, but he's got some personal matters on. He wants to come on and talk about some corners. Patrick Surtain, Caleb Farley, all those. It's going to be a matter of time for it. We're also talking to a couple other people coming on. Talking to a defensive line coach that I know, talking to a linebacker coach that I know, and talking to an offensive line coach that I know as well about coming on. And it's just going to be interesting to see. And Drew Lock is trash. Not everything on the Broncos offense was all his fault, but a good portion of it was. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Also, as Chase says, before we get out of here, go Grizz, go Broncos. Y'all stay safe. Take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. May the force be with you. That one's for Eric. Yeah. We will see you guys next week. Same time, same place, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern here on YouTube. Thanks again for watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers. We'll see you guys later. Have a great weekend.